And he said, "Hey, that's Stevie Ray Vaughan." I said, "Cool. Who's Stevie Ray Vaughan?"
Howdy, folks. Tom Bowlus with Bass Gear Magazine. And today I am talking with Hank Horton, who is a bass player, as you would expect, but also a vocalist, producer, and a multi-instrumentalist. Currently wrapped up a tour with Skunk Baxter and maybe doing some more of that later on. So how you doing, Hank?
Great, Tom. Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us and being here with us and taking some time to chat with us. I know you just got done with the tour with Skunk, but you have an extremely varied CV. You've played with a ton of different folks. Can you give us a bit of a rundown of the different musical acts you've performed with?
Sure. Well, ones that people would have heard of. I worked with the guys in Styx, both individually and collectively, for over 23 years. My first gig was with Dennis DeYoung in 1986. I got in the band, and 3 days later, we were on the West Coast taping a show that some people of a certain age would remember called Solid Gold, because Dennis had a song from one of his solo albums that was climbing the charts, and we were on there with the Fabulous Thunderbirds, whose song was Tough Enough at the time. So I sat in makeup in the morning, sitting next to a guy from the Thunderbirds, and our guitar player was on this side, and he said, "Hey, that's Stevie Ray Vaughan." I said, "Cool. Who's Stevie Ray Vaughan?" Because he wasn't Stevie Ray Vaughan yet, but he was playing rhythm guitar with the band, and that was pretty cool. And then I went on to work with JY, James Young, and Todd Zuckerman, and did some things with Tommy. And then in 2000, I played bass on a few of the tracks of Brave New World, because Chuck was really sick, and Jack Blades and I played a few of the songs on the album to help him get it finished and stuff. So, and then I played with Dennis and JY some more. And then I left Dennis in 2009 and went on the road with a musical, 101 Dalmatians, and started doing a lot more pit work, playing acoustic and electric and fretless. And then started playing about 6-7 years ago, playing with the Detroit Symphony, playing electric and acoustic, and Lansing Symphony. And about 2.5 years ago, I started playing with Skunk, because he put a band together for his Speed of Heat album, his first solo album. And we've been working together ever since. Well, his and my friend CJ Vanston had been working on Skunk's album for years. And CJ kind of threw my name in the hat along with a bunch of others and said, here's some bass player singers that you might like. He says, I know all of them. I've worked with all of them. And he let Skunk pick, and he picked me. And I bought a lottery ticket that day.
Nice. Well, I'm sure having strong vocal talents always brings a lot more to the table too when you're working as a bass player.
Oh yeah, and that was and the same guy, CJ, mentioned me to Dennis when he was putting a band together, because I have a real high range. And actually, CJ and I played together here in Michigan for a long time, and we used to do Styx covers. And I sang a lot of them, or sang the high parts. And this is dating it a little bit, but CJ gave him a cassette of me and CJ playing in a band doing Styx songs, and he said, "Well, I know a bass player that sounds just like you." And so that kind of got me that gig, And then same thing with Skunk, because the Speed of Heat album has Michael McDonald, Clint Black, Johnny Lang, and Rick Livingston singing on it, because they all co-wrote songs over a period of time. But Skunk said, "Don't try to sound like those guys. Just sound like yourself. We're not a cover band. We're not trying to cover these songs, but we're going to play them, and they've evolved a little bit over time as well. So it's been a lot of fun, and he's such a generous person. I just can't tell you. He always wants things to develop, and he says, give it your own spin, do your own thing, play it the way you feel like it, So it's very cool. Great. Yeah, it is.
And if you're sounding like Dennis DeYoung, that is high compliments because, man, Dennis has a great voice, and you're right, he has a heck of a range too.
He does, and he's a great guy too. We worked together a lot and did a lot of tours and a couple of albums and a soundstage, and did tour for 2 years, playing with different orchestras around the country, and yeah, just a lot of fun. All the guys in Styx are great guys, just salt of the earth, uber talented, and Skunk as well. So it makes you lift your game. If you get put in the ball game, you lift your game and it makes you better.
Absolutely. And to go from playing in those types of bands and also during stints with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, that really shows your breadth as a bass player too.
Yeah, I mean, I got a bachelor's and a master's and did my doctoral studies in string-based performance, and that was to make myself a better reader and all styles of music, because played classical and jazz and rock and country and everything. So my goal was to never have to turn down a gig, never feel uncomfortable with any gig that anybody calls me for, and because then it's all preparation. And as I have some students as well, and my students will say, well, what's it like playing with the Detroit Symphony? I said, well, first of all, it's awesome. Second thing is, and they said, well, what about rehearsals? I said, well, you have 1 2.5 hour rehearsal, and then you start the series of concerts, just like a musical. You have 1 2.5 hour rehearsal, or 3 hours if you're a local, musician joining a tour. So the preparation is weeks before each concert, because all they want is perfect right from the downbeat.
That's it.
That's it. So if you're prepared, you have no reason to be nervous. And that's it. So preparation is everything to me. So by the time I got ready to go out with Skunk, I had 6 weeks from the time I got the gig until we started rehearsals. And I worked 10, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 6 weeks.
Wow.
Because there were no charts. I had to make my own charts, learn the songs, learn all the vocals, memorize all the words, memorize all the songs. And so 2 weeks out, I could play through the show. And I was playing through the show probably at least 4 times a day. So by the time I got there, it had been like I'd been playing on the road with him for a month. So from the downbeat, we just hit it, And it's the same with any band I work with or any orchestra. The musicals, because I had a musical I did one time. It had 99 pages of music and had 4 weeks to learn it. Didn't have to memorize it, but had to play it,
Right.
So preparation is everything. And the discipline of having the right way to practice, which I've cultivated for myself over the years, the way that I can approach all the music, the notes that I make in the music, how I learn the music. That's the most important thing. There's a lot of guys that can play the stuff, but when you're thrown into that situation, there's a lot of pressure. But I don't get it from them. I put it on myself, but ahead of time. I put the pressure on to learn it. When I get there, I relax and have fun.
Wow. That's the way to do it. It's not easy, but boy, that is a great approach.
Cool.
I started off on upright bass as well, then switched over to bass guitar. So it's interesting hearing all this stuff. And I considered, trying to do orchestral performance as a career path, and realized that there are a lot of players a lot better than I was, who were going to get the gigs before me. So I had to be realistic, but I'm sure that's a blast playing with the Detroit Symphony.
It is. And I did it the other way. I started on piano when I was 5.
Okay.
Because my parents were music teachers, and then I played drums and guitar, and then I switched to bass probably at 18 or 19, playing electric and singing in rock and roll bands. And then in my mid-20s, I decided to go back to school, took up acoustic bass, and so I did it the other way. But
Oh, wow.
I had thought about, doing the orchestral thing too. And I set a tape and got invited to audition for the Milwaukee Symphony after I got my bachelor's. And so I went to Milwaukee, and there were 90 acoustic bass players for one position.
Wow.
I said, well, I'm going to maybe rethink this.
Yep.
And that's all they'd played all their life is that repertoire. And I'm trying to play everything. So if I get a call to play Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony or Fifth Symphony or Ninth, or, whatever, I work on it and I work it up, but I don't know all the literature as well as they do, but I can learn it and I can play it, So that's always my goal, is just to be able to play anything that anybody wants anytime.
Fantastic. Of course, being Bass Gear magazine, we have to talk about your gear a little bit. So first off, tell me about the instruments that you play.
Well, you can kind of see in the corner there's one of my uprights. That's a Wilfer that I restored about 3 years ago, and it's kind of become my go-to bass, either for classical or jazz. It has a Fishman full circle pickup on it, and as do all my basses, because I find that those, when I switch a pedal, which happens to be a Boss AB pedal or pedals, and go to electric, I don't have to change the volume at all. Although now with the Katana, which we'll get to, I have all my settings on there, both volume, EQ, compression, effects, everything, But I still use a volume pedal, expression pedal on the Katana pedal board, because I think that's important for acoustic bass or electric bass. Because let's say you're playing along with the symphony and I'm playing electric and I'm reading the music and the conductor does this. Well, I don't want to change how I'm playing either the electric or the acoustic. And so I just pull the volume pedal back. Or I'm playing a jazz gig and, it's a ballad. And so I like to play that the same too, or playing arco. And so then it gets a little more energetic and I just give it a little more gas and I don't have to play any harder. So I think the volume pedal is almost as important as anything else to me for that. Because, when you're reading music and playing with your left hand and plucking with your right, you can't really have time to turn it down without missing a note unless you're doing hammer-ons, which happens too. So, so that's that. This is the bass that I play most of the time now. It's a Schecter Silver Mountain 5-string. It has the Fishman Fluence pickups in it, which I can't say enough about. And Skunk knows Fishman and helped him, with some of the design of this. He told me with guitar pickups, but it just sounds awesome. I'm kind of a Schecter guy. So here's another Schecter, fretless. And the neon strings kind of give away the fact that I use DR strings as well on everything.
Good stuff.
And these are nickel. They're just, coated with something to make them cool. And the other bass I have stainless on. Let's see here. This might be one that you may have seen, but not in a long time. What do you think that is? It's a 1985/86 Paul Reed Smith.
Paul Reed Smith, I was going to say, yeah, the headstock curve.
Yep.
Nice.
And I've had that since it came out. And I had 5 strings before, but this one has the same width up here as a 4-string P bass. But it's 5-string. Fits my hand really well, as do the Schecters. Almost the same neck radius. Here's another Schecter. Just a little older than the Silver Mountain 5-string. And this one,
that's the Ray Ross Bridge.
Ray Ross Bridge. Oh yeah.
Saddleless, baby.
Changer, because there's no saddle. And it just rings forever and ever. And there's more tone than you can imagine. When I put the bridge on, I had older strings on, but the DRs last a long time anyway. It had older strings, so I put the bridge on, put these strings back on, and they sounded like new strings. It was amazing. So I have a number of basses back behind me, and they're all going to have the Ray Ross bridge pretty soon.
Yeah, that's very unique. We did a review of a Brubaker that had that bridge on it, and then actually I have one of their bridges in. We're going to do some testing on. They're going to swap out on a Squire and put the Ray Ross on it, do some measurements before and afterwards, because it really is a game changer for sure.
It is. Now to the other piece of gear that just changed my life completely recently. That's the Boss Katana. I went in a music store, and because I didn't know about this amp. I don't know why, because nobody told me. And I went in to look at something else because I wanted another combo. And I played everything in there, and I looked at this, and I started reading what you could do with it and played it, and it just knocked it out of the park. I could not believe the tone and the volume out of 210s and a bullet tweeter. But the thing that really hooked me was the programmable EQ. Because for an acoustic bass player that's going through an amp, what's the biggest problem when you get to the gig? Oh, let's see. Where did I have this set last time? Where is that one notch that makes the bass feedback? Well, not a problem anymore. Because besides the parametrics that are in there, you could have a 31 band EQ, and I have compression on it to make the bass spit a little bit. So now all I have to do is get to the gig, turn it on, hit the button for my acoustic bass, and there it is every time. Now, if you get in a room and you need a little more high end or something, you don't have to reprogram it from your phone, which you can, or a laptop, because it has Bluetooth. So I can upload and download sounds, or what's called live sets of sounds on there from the phone. But you can just go to the panel, change the tone a little bit, and go. Now, when you turn the amp off and turn it back on again, your sound comes back exactly the way that you programmed it, because it's not volatile when you turn the knobs to change the whatever you want to change. It goes back to the preset when it resets. Now, if you really like that sound, you can just hit right, save it, and then there you go. So I bought the amp and brought it home. The first thing I did was program a preset and EQ and everything for the acoustic bass. And Skunk said, well, that's tremendous. I don't know that I've heard of anybody using that amp for an acoustic bass. Well, the Detroit Symphony bought one because they have a Prescott acoustic bass that they offer to jazz musicians that are coming through that don't travel with it. And now they have a Katana with those sounds in it for that bass. So you can say, here's your bass, here's your amp. If you don't, anything you want to do, just do that. So every time somebody comes in, they hit the pedal, and it's the sound that, we've set up. I actually have about 3 or 4 different sounds for that bass for them. And another friend of mine.
Did you help them?
I'm sorry?
Did you help them dial that in with on their Katana?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because I know the head audio guy there real well, and he's the one that asked me about the amp. And he says, okay, well, we have to have one of those, because I had worked on the Prescott and did some restoration on it, made it play easy. And so, helped him with that. And then another friend of mine from here in Lansing came over one day with his acoustic, plugged into this, and went, oh my gosh, I got to have one of those. He didn't get it right then. He came out to a gig I played locally, and I had a couple basses, and I said, why don't you come and sit in? He says, okay, I'll play a song. And so he played a song, and I said, you want to get down now? He said, no, I'll play some more. And he played some more. He played about 3 or 4 songs and said, I really have to get one of those. Well, the other day he sent me a picture and said, digging the Katana. It was the amp and his bass. And he tours with a jazz clarinetist named Dave Bennett. And he also plays with other people as well. But he's digging the Katana.
Is he playing mostly upright, or is he doubling on electric also?
He doubles, yeah, because he does a lot of jazz gigs on acoustic, and then he also plays electric with Dave and other people. And he also does pit work as well.
I have to admit, when I first was reading up on everything that the Katana brand was bringing, I was pretty excited about, some of the effects and things, going from a clean tone to an overdriven tone, thinking of it from an electric bass perspective. But everything you're saying about, using it on upright and doubling and whatnot, boy, that just makes total sense.
It does. It does. And because there's no time and no patience of anybody to have to be twiddling your knobs on the amp all the time. You got to have your sounds and trust them and be confident that when you hit that button, it's going to happen. That was the first thing, the EQ, the programmable EQ. I thought, oh, finally, bass players have what guitar players have had forever. Now, here's one more thing, because you mentioned the effects. Because I've had a lot of Boss pedals, I've had a looper for fun and chorus and, things like that. But here's the thing. Every time you hit the pedal, the EQ isn't quite right to my ear for that sound. Well, here you go. You can, if you want chorus, you put the chorus on, you program it for that, and then you tweak the EQ for the chorus or an octave pedal, Maybe you want the octave, a little more of the high and a little less of the low, but the low is just a little too boomy when it comes out. Well, you just program the EQ. So you turn that on. It's a different EQ for your different effect. And the compression, you can pick your type of compressor. It's just, I've had it a few months and I've only scratched the surface, but I've had it out with Skunk, and I told him, I said, I think 2 of these would do your gig. And so the first time we went out, had 2 of them. And then there was a place that I tried 1. This last leg, I only used 1 of these on stage. And it kept up with the drums and Skunk's 2, what is it? Blues Cubes? Yeah, 2 of those. So
very nice.
And one day we were doing sound check, and it was in about a 1,200 seat theater. And I usually have this set on about 2 or 2.5, not much. And I turned it up to about 3.5 before we started doing sound check. And our front of house guy all the way in the back of the theater said, that's going to be too loud. And our sound guy, Frank Gallagher, who's worked with B-52s and Talking Heads and stuff, he loves it. He thinks it's great. And the DI is great because I have an Avalon U5 that I also use as well.
Sure.
Right off the bass, but he also takes the DI off this so he can get the effects in that EQ. So he can kind of mix them.
Always good to have a brutally honest front of house engineer, right?
Yeah. And he's Scottish too. So, with the Scottish brogue, it's, laddie, that's going to be a little bit too loud.
I know you mentioned that you use the volume pedal or an expression pedal. Do you use any of the other optional foot switches with the Katana?
Just the pedal board, just
Gotcha.
This.
Yep.
Just that. That's all I need.
And it also doesn't break your back to haul it around at gigs either, which is fantastic.
No. And when I want to take it out, I just carry it out to the car and use the 2-wheeler to carry it in, carry my bassist, carry that. I don't have to take anything else except a couple of cables, no pedals. Don't have to plug the pedals in. It's all there. And the price, my God, I mean, it's cheap at twice the price for what it does. Yeah. Think about all the effects and all the compression and all. Oh man, it's crazy. And for somebody that says, well, I have to have, like an SVT on stage. Okay, well, 4 of these, you got an SVT that's going to sound cleaner and more powerful than an SVT. And I've used SVTs, and I've used SVT bottoms with a GK 1001 head. You just chain them together. You come out of the DI and into the amplifier in, and just keep going. And then all the effects and all the programs go to each one. And then if you want to use the DI out of the amp, you take it out of the last one in the chain. So, yeah. So you could buy 4 of these for half of what a SVT is.
Right, right.
And your crew will love it too, because then it's just little pieces and there's nothing big, you know?
Are you set up that we could maybe hear a bit of you playing through it?
Sure. We'll do the acoustic bass first.
Nice.
Sound okay?
Sounds very
coming over?
natural. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I wasn't sure if you had the amp turned on or if that was just the acoustic sound of the bass, but it sounded very natural.
Here's without the amp. And there's with the amp.
Nice.
So that's that. Now we can do the fretless. I'm just going to change the sound, and I've developed a few different sounds for this, you know, for each of the basses that I have. So the live sets that I talked about, there are 6 presets on the pedal. There I am. There's 6 presets on the pedal, but you can have multiple live sets. So you can have 6 presets, Skunk 1, presets, Skunk 2, presets, Detroit Symphony, you know, and have another one that's acoustic bass, fretless bass, or acoustic bass, fretless bass, fretted bass. Or I could even break it down to particular models of bass. Now, the only thing that's on that really is a little bit of compression. But then there's another sound that I have on here with an octave and delay. Or chorus. So that's some on the fretless.
That sounds great. I think we might be overloading your laptop mic a little bit there, but you can hear pretty well. Yeah. It sounds great though. It's a good sounding chorus.
Yeah, it is. And here's the same things on the fretted. I'll try not to play so loud. I say that on every gig, don't we all? No, really, I'll turn down. So here's just the clean sound. And with the chorus. Octave. So you get the idea, you know.
So I know you said you started off, you know, playing piano and then electric bass or whatnot. Did you come from a musical family? Was that something you did around the house, or is that something you kind of went off on a tangent and did on your own?
Both my parents were college music teachers. They taught voice and piano.
Nice.
And my mom taught organ as well. So yeah, musical family.
Very nice.
Piano lessons from the time I was 5 until I was 13. You know,
You still play piano as well?
yeah, piano. Yeah. Yeah. And I played keyboards in some bands and played guitar and played drums in high school. And then eventually settled on bass.
Do you consider bass your primary instrument then?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I just kind of can play something on the other instruments now. But I can sit down at the piano and play things, and I work out if I'm writing or arranging something. I can work out that, or have an acoustic guitar back here that I work on some things, you know, different chord voicings and things like that. So yeah,
Absolutely.
bass
Man,
and vocals. That's my primary thing. But all the basses, you know, all of them,
right.
you know, which you know, you have to keep your chops up on acoustic and electric and stuff all the time because you might get a call tomorrow, might get a call to do a session on acoustic, you know? So,
Right. Yeah, very different, different scale lengths, and the muscle memory is all different. And even the way your forearm muscles are used is different. So I'm sure that is a lot of work.
but since I work on basses, I have that set up to play almost as easy as my electric.
Really?
In fact, that was the comment of one of the guys in the section at Detroit Symphony when I worked on the Prescott. I put some Tomastic spiral cores on it and set it up and planed the fingerboard to get it so I could get the action down, you know, really low. And he pulled it out of the locker and he says, "Oh man," he says, "you made this play almost as easy as an electric bass." I said, "Well, yeah, that's how I set mine up because I don't want to have to work any harder than I have to."
Sure. I have to mention that with you being a Spartan and myself being a Buckeye, there is a certain team that we both hate. So I hope we can both trounce them nicely this year.
Oh yeah, you bet.
And who would have thought the Big Ten would ever include UCLA, USC, Washington, Oregon? These are odd times.
Yeah, 10 adds up to what now?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. A whole lot more. Appreciate you spending some time with us, and
You bet.
loved hearing you play. And we have the Katana 210 in for part of a big bass combo shootout we're doing. And you got me inspired now. I have to break out. I have an old K upright, so I'm going to try that through the Katana, see how that goes.
Sure. And
I got a full circle in it, so
I would say the first thing to do with the amp is it's probably going to ask you to update the firmware.
Yeah,
that you have to do with a cable to the laptop. Because I asked them if you could do it with the Bluetooth. Can't do it because it's too much information. But everything else, as far as programming and uploading and downloading, like, see, I've gone out a few times now with Skunk, and Roland will send the amps out. And so it doesn't have my sounds in it. So I just take my phone, hook up to Bluetooth, and it takes about 10 seconds to upload my sounds into the amplifiers. Done.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's very cool.
You know, so my hope is that at some point, because there are a number of backline companies that have the Katana, that guys will get them, and guys will have their sounds, you know, because that's the worst thing is to get there and the amp doesn't sound great. It doesn't have your sound. You got to take a bunch of pedals. You just get there and 10 seconds, you got all your sounds in there.
Yeah, that's super cool.
As I told somebody, you get your sounds at home and you take them to the gig on your phone.
And again, yeah. So here's your rig in 2024. You know, and again, the Big Ten has 16 teams from coast to coast. One last question before I let you go.
Sure.
What is something that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started off your career as a performing musician?
Wow, what a great question. What do I wish I knew now? Well, I guess that you have to not try to prove anything to anybody else except yourself. Because when you think about trying to do something to please an audience, like if you're doing a solo, if you try to please them, you've lost. Please yourself. Play what you do the best you can do, and it'll be recognized.
That's great advice. I love it.
Cool.